Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another VMDO Virtual Networking Breakfast. My name's Katie Stewart. I am the Acting General Manager at the Victorian Music Development Office. A lot of you are already familiar with us and what we do, but if you are new to joining Networking Breakfasts, I'll give you a quick overview. So the VMDO exists to support the Victorian music industry, and we run events like this one, like our virtual networking breakfasts. We offer professional development opportunities and workshops. We support various research projects, and we aim to connect the Victorian music industry with key contacts and leads to help them do better business. So we'll be hosting a variety of online events throughout the rest of the year. So please keep in touch with us through our mailing list and through our social media channels for the latest updates. We have a newsletter coming out once a fortnight on a Friday. So there'll be one coming out this Friday with more news about upcoming programs. So we've been hosting virtual networking breakfasts since March this year. And before that, we hosted them in person at the White Sky Music Hub in Collingwood. We now present these monthly and we'll be including some details about the next month at the end of today's session. So today's talk is about tools for resilience, which we're presenting in partnership with Support Act. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm on today, which is the East Kulin Nation. And I'd also like to acknowledge the many nations throughout Victoria and Australia that all of you are gathering on today. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge all First Peoples joining us this morning. So at the end of today's session, we'll give you another opportunity to go back into those same networking groups and continue your conversations and connect with others and discuss what you've learnt today from the talk, and also just have a general chat with your peers in the music industry. So throughout the presentation, if a question comes to mind, you can type it directly in the chat box below, and the panel may integrate your questions as they go, if they can, or they may wait until the end to address them in their final discussion. So I'd like to introduce the wonderful panel this morning. So first up, we have Luke O'Connor from Support Act, and Luke is the Industry Relations and Partnership Manager. So what that means is Luke is responsible for raising the awareness of Support Act's brilliant programs for the music industry, and he manages the organisation's prevention, education and training initiatives. Luke is also a singer-songwriter performing with Fools, Doc Halibut and Alex Waybury. So our next panellist is ZIIMUSIC. ZIIMUSIC is a Naarm-based creative, originally from Zimbabwe. ZIIMUSIC began his creative career as a rapper and musician. He has had the privilege of performing in and around Naarm, where his band has performed at festivals and sold out venues. In 2017, ZIIMUSIC stepped into the spoken word scene as he was part of the band of brothers comprising of Naarm's most decorated spoken word artists. So we also have Ash King from the Indigo project. Ash King is a provisional psychologist and content manager with progressive psychology practice, the Indigo project, cyber psychology researcher and mental health educator for Support Act. She's passionate about making mental health interesting, and her background working in music, radio and other arts industries offers a fresh creative perspective when it comes to mental well-being. And finally on the panel we have Sarah Hamilton from Ditto Music. Sarah's the Regional Manager for Australia New Zealand. Ditto Music is a music and label services company in Australia that works with over 250,000 artists and labels worldwide, with offices in 25 countries. Sarah has been working in digital distribution in Australia since 2008, including a short stint in New York City. She loves working with independent artists and seeing them gain access to the same opportunities as artists signed to major labels. I am now going to hand over to our wonderful moderator this morning, Viv Fantin from Next Act Coaching. So over to you, Viv.
Thanks so much, Katie, and hi everyone. I'm sitting here on the land of the Arakwal Bundjalung people and the wider Bundjalung Nation, and I pay my respects to the custodians of this beautiful land, and also respect to any First Peoples who are joining us here in this virtual space today. I want to thank Katie and Jess and all at the VMDO for putting this panel together, and just more broadly for the resources and incredible offerings that you put together for the music industry in Victoria. I'm always blown away by how thoughtful they are. And of course to the legends at Support Act who are co-presenting today and who are, you know, literally a lifeline to many in the music industry. So thank you. So morning, I know that you guys have been at it already for half an hour or so. My name is Viv, and as Katie said, I'm a coach. I work with people in the music industry. And I do work with a lot of people who are in the Victorian music industry. So I know firsthand that many of you are really doing it tough, and I want to acknowledge that, and I would like to send you all my strength and a virtual hug to those who are having a hard time at the moment. And I do hope that this short panel, and it is short, but I hope that it offers some insights that will help you find your footing. And we're talking about resilience, and it's a word that gets bandied around a lot, and you're probably hearing it a lot at the moment. We hear it from government leaders, you know, that we're a resilient nation, a resilient people. We hear it in the context of industry. And life can bring all kinds of stressors, obviously not just COVID-19, but yes, it so happens that we're in the middle of a once in a 100-year pandemic. So we know that COVID is seriously testing our music industry. But not only that, us, the people, you know, the humans who exist within that music industry. So today really is less about the collective and more about individual resilience and how we can be there for ourselves to help us through this adversity. And we don't necessarily think about resilience until we're faced with a setback. And I think that we all accept that it's not possible to get through life without misfortune or challenges. And, you know, obviously we'll be faced with adversity even after COVID eventually runs its course. So I'm keen to dive into what's a pretty big topic in a short space of time. I'm excited by the speakers here today and interested to learn more from them about what is not only helpful for the here and now through this current situation, but also insights that you can hopefully lean on for the future. So I would love to dig in, and I'd love to start with you, Ash, you know, and get, I guess, a psychologist sort of overview and maybe defining what resilience is, and you know, what are some of the myths that we might have around resilience and what it is to be resilient?
Thanks, Viv. That's an awesome question. And like you said, resilience is a word that gets bandied around a lot nowadays. And we do all have these sort of misconceptions, I guess, about what it is. So we kind of define resilience as the ability to respond and adapt well in the face of things like adversity, trauma, tragedy, and generally other major sources of stress. So it's kind of like the act of bouncing back from really tough experiences or events. I think that the major myth that surrounds resilience is that stuff doesn't affect you. So you think, oh, well, if I'm resilient, then I'm not going to get emotional. This is not going to impact me in a way that I, you know, really am feeling things and I'm really struggling. So people who are resilient still feel and they still struggle. It really is the story that they tell themselves, sort of reflecting back on that time, that helps sort of imbue them with some more strength. And this quite adaptive mindset that the things that they've gone through will help make them stronger for things that they'll go through in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I guess in your line of work, you see all kinds of different people who are facing all sorts of different challenges. And I wonder, what do you see as being, I guess, characteristics of a resilient person? Like, can you kind of define some of the traits that you see?
Yeah, for sure. You know, one of the interesting things is that I get a lot of clients who come in wanting to work on resilience, and they don't recognize the traits that they already have that make them a resilient person to begin with. We often think that it's something that's kind of outside of ourselves that we need to bring on, but many of us already have these amazing stores of resilience within us that we've already built up and we don't even recognize. So things like, you know, a good question or something that you often ask yourself when things are really hard in life is, why is this happening to me? And sort of reframing that question into, what can I learn from this? Or what is this teaching me? Seeing challenges as experiences to grow, and maybe practice greater self-compassion towards yourself rather than making yourself feel guilty because you're feeling any kind of way. You're feeling like this is hard. You're feeling really down. You're feeling like you're really struggling. You know, a lot of people think that that feeling experience is inherently bad, and it's not at all. We're all human beings. We're all built to feel. It's just what we do. And I think that in most part, our society does not make a lot of space for feelings, particularly the messy ones and the ones that, you know, especially when we're kids, it's like, you know, or stop being angry, or you shouldn't be upset about that. So we kind of get conditioned to hide away these feelings. And then when we grow up and we're feeling them, we feel some shame and we feel some guilt. And so in the really difficult challenges in our lives, when these feelings are all coming up in big kind of ways, not only are we trying to deal with the situation around us that's posing, you know, so much challenge, we're also shaming and guilting ourselves for feeling like it's hard. So I think that at the root of resilience is self-compassion and being able to, I guess, believe in ourselves that we have what it takes to get through really challenging times, or we have what it takes to ask for help when we need to.
It's such a great answer, and really interesting, I think, too, but getting back to that question of the myths, you know, maybe the myth that you have to be tough, that you have to resist what's going on, that you have to, you know, show grit, that it's a weakness to show vulnerability. But in fact, what you're describing is that it's the exact opposite. And knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable and knowing when to reach out is actually a part of that. So, and people might think that we have only certain amounts of reserves of resilience, that, you know, we have what we're kind of born with, and that's that. But research has shown that we can actually build our resilience and sort of flex it. Can you add on to that and maybe just describe what some of the benefits are of actually, you know, building those skills of resilience?
Yeah, for sure. Building resilience is an interesting one, because often when we're building it, we don't realize that that's what we're doing. It's because we build resilience when we're going through tough times. And when we're going through tough times, it often doesn't feel like anything good is happening from it. But what is happening is, if we do act in sort of these more adaptive, helpful ways, we are actually building resilience all the while. So I think some of the important points when it comes to building resilience are looking at what you can and cannot control. A lot of us feel quite out of control by a lot of things, and that's kind of just life, essentially. But there are things that are within our power, and when we are able to delineate between the two, we can really then take action on the things that are within our control, and that really helps empower us. I think another point is working on self-compassion, you know, starting to recognize how you talk to yourself. What are the thoughts that come up for you, and how hard are you being on yourself? How are you shaming yourself? How are you guilting yourself? What things are you telling yourself that you would never tell somebody that you love? And just really getting mindful about that inner dialogue, because it runs 24/7, or maybe we get a break when we're having a nap, but we really need to understand what are these things that we're telling ourselves over and over. I think other more basic things, like just looking after yourself, looking after your body. Looking after your body helps you look after your mind. So getting enough sleep, drinking water, eating healthy, exercising, allowing yourself to do fun things you enjoy. I think when you're going through challenges as well, sometimes all that kind of gets pushed to the sideline. We think, oh, I don't have time for this, or no, I should be focusing on the things that are, that need to be managed right now. But I think that there is something to be said about things that help us connect with joyful emotions, with happy emotions. And we need to keep tapping into that, even in times of stress or challenge.
And actually, when we had a brief chat on the phone the other day, you said something that I thought was really interesting, that I think might be a helpful share, that when you're building resilience, it doesn't necessarily feel good.
Mm-hmm.
There's discomfort. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, think about when maybe you've taken a lot of time off exercise and you've gone to do an exercise class or gone to the gym, and everyone's like, oh, exercise, it feels so great. You go in there and you're absolutely dying. Everything is in pain. And the next couple of days you're aching and you can't even walk up the stairs. So it's like, I guess, this pain is actually ends up being helpful, because while you're going through that challenge, while you're, it's kind of like making diamonds, like putting the pressure on yourself actually ends up helping you come out of the experience even stronger. So it's not nice, and going through stress and going through challenge and going through hardship and adversity isn't nice. It isn't fun. It's not going to feel good, even if you are building up something that is as important as resilience. But you can recognize that eventually, as all things do, it will pass. And when you come out of this experience, what you might have is a diamond in your hand that will help empower you to get through anything else that life throws at you.
Oh, thanks, Ash. It's amazing and such a great analogy, the exercise one, and one that I can definitely relate to. Luke, I'd love to throw to you. You work for Support Act, which, as I said earlier, is an absolute lifeline and resource for people of the music community around Australia. And I just wonder if you could just recap on some of the offerings that people can access.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for having us today, VMDO. Really appreciate it. Happy to be partnering on this, as there are a number of initiatives that Support Act is trying to put in place to really support the music industry through this tough time. Firstly, I just wanted to remark on some of the things that Ash has said. Like, I think one thing that's inherent in people who pursue a career in music, as someone who has been both a musician and a social worker, is this inherent perseverance to pursue a career. It's a tough, high performance environment in music, and that kind of inherent grit that people have to continue on that course. I have had to dig into those reserves very much so of late to try and get myself through this tough time. But also being asked to be resilient all the time can sometimes feel like you're being asked to fight for yourself. And that's kind of the context within which Support Act has put its mind to ensuring that no one in the industry feels like they're kind of left on their own. Mental illness in the music industry, through a survey that was conducted a couple of years ago by Victoria University, we're looking at rates of 5 times that of the average population of people reporting that they're experiencing some kind of mental distress. So with that, it can sometimes be a sensitive community, but also people who are, finding that strength often to keep plowing on with the career. So to your question, Viv, yeah, absolutely. So Support Act conducts our 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week wellbeing helpline, which I encourage anyone who's on this call today to contact. It's available on 1-800-959-500. And that service was set up a couple of years ago specifically for people who work in the music industry. And it's staffed by qualified mental health practitioners who are trained with Support Act on what are the kind of things that people who work in music might want to talk about. And so that's artists, crew workers, and music workers. So if you're a manager, label person, promoter, etc. So I encourage anyone who's on this call and kind of feeling like they need to reach out to someone to have a chat, to contact that line, as you know, it's been pivotal for a number of people through this crisis and trying to get them on the right track to the support that they need. On top of that, Support Act has just also launched a manager support line, which is our manager support hotline. So anyone who manages staff, whether it be within your own business, or if you are in fact an artist manager, you can call this hotline on 1-800-818-728. And you know, this service allows managers and team leaders to receive coaching in 15-minute increments from our helpline clinicians and how to manage the mental health issue of somebody else within their care. So like I said, a staff member or an artist that you might be managing. And lastly, and this, we haven't officially launched this yet, but as of next week, I think we'll be launching our First Nations support line, which is, we've employed Carissa Grant as our First Nations community engagement social worker. And her role is to ensure that more First Nations artists, crew, music workers access our service. And this dedicated support line is designed to foster a feeling of cultural safety, staffed by First Nations psychologists and other clinicians with cultural sensitivity training. So really trying to reach out to that space as well. So there's plenty of support available out there for people. So yeah, hopefully you'll reach out if you need it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Luke. I think it's always worth reminding people of the options that are available. Luke and I happened to read the same article last week, and it was a headline that caught my eye, and the headline was, "Is resilience overrated?" And I'm curious about what your thoughts are, not so much about whether it's overrated or not, but is it the be all and end all? Is it the only tool in the toolkit to help us through adversity from your perspective?
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I think one thing that I'm always keen to do in my career is to not just grab something and go with it and make it the be all and end all. And it's certainly with Support Act, making sure that we have a range of ways of responding to people's issues is very important. And I think resilience is so important. And for myself, like I said, as someone who's been an artist and also working as a social worker, having resilience is very important, because to take the kind of kicks in the teeth sometimes in this career of like putting yourself out there and then having to have that bounce back ability, which is kind of inherent in working in what is a high performance space where a lot of is expected of you. But like I said before, I think also, resilience isn't the absence of being able to ask for help either. It's really important that people know that even by attending today, they are exhibiting that they are wanting to reach out to establish networks, to have community, to feel supported, and that they should have, part of being resilient is being able to ask for support and knowing when to reach out to one of those hotlines or just call a friend or a family member, whoever it might be, to say, hey, I'm actually doing it really tough. And I'm sure a lot of us have felt that. And even I've always kind of considered myself a very stoic and resilient person. And I'll put my hand up and say, through this, it's been incredibly tough. It's been a very tough time. And it's made me, thankfully, I get to talk to Ash King every week and have a check-in about how I'm feeling. And thankfully, she's gotten me through this tough time. So high five to you, Ash.
Oh, so can resilience help avert a mental health crisis? Is it preventative?
Yeah, well, I think it's part of the toolkit, and I'm sure Ash can speak much more eloquently about this, but it's part of the toolkit of things that you need to try and make yourself feel well. I guess it's, having that capability to feel like, okay, this is challenging, but I've got this. What do I need to do when I feel like I've got a challenge? Like, is it an activity that I always turn to? Is it ensuring that I can be adaptable? I can deal with something that comes up and go, okay, well, I'm going to do it differently. It's maintaining optimism. And sometimes these are things that are really tough to hold on to in times of adversity, but persistence is the other thing, like remaining persistent for people who are having careers in music, whether it be as an artist or a manager or whatever. That whole loss of identity, I guess, that people might have experienced when COVID first hit. We're coming, hopefully, to the other end of it now. and having that persistence to go, I haven't lost everything. I haven't lost my career. I can only control the things that I can control. And hopefully after this, we can just pick up where we left off.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lou. And you're right about the loss of identity, and I guess the loss of goals as well, or maybe, you know, having a goal that you've had to park or shrink down, and there's a loss, I guess, that's attached to that too. ZIIMUSIC, I would love to talk to you. I haven't met you yet, but you're a music artist, a spoken word artist, all-round creative. You also work in the corporate space as a project manager. And I'm really curious to hear from you about how COVID has impacted your resilience and whether you've noticed a difference between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, you know, the two lockdowns that the Victorian people have experienced.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I mean, I exist in a very, very unique and interesting space. And as such, I think it's important for me to acknowledge the lands on which I am currently on. Those are the Wurundjeri people. The reason why I find it important to continuously acknowledge these lands is, having come from Zimbabwe, which is a former colony, we too have gone through a lot of oppression and have experienced a great deal amount of trauma through racism and other systemic oppressions. And what's been interesting in my journey as I've migrated to Australia has been the final realization that the trauma that has been perpetuated by my experience as a human has existed long and far beyond COVID actually happened. And what COVID did for me, or at least what the isolation part of COVID did, was it forced me to sit with those traumas and actually acknowledge that they existed. Now, what I've found in the general population is that this has been a battle that has either been ignored or has people have actually sat down and decided to address it. I was in a conversation yesterday, actually. I haven't done my due diligence to confirm this, but there are stats that are actually saying that the pandemic itself is not the issue when it comes to the death rate. It's actually the suicide rate that's actually increased. There's a lot more deaths that are happening as a result of mental health issues because of people being forced to sit within their traumas and look at the world a bit differently. Now, as mentioned before, like, I exist in the corporate space, and by day I work as a consultant, and that's exposed me to a few different organizations, and I've been able to observe and watch what they're doing in order to ensure that their employees are taken care of. And it's quite interesting that on the broader sense, the human aspect is only considered once there's an economic issue that's been impacted. And that kind of presents a different issue, because my observations on economics is that you need the human experience to be comfortable in order for you to exercise your economic rights. But that isn't the case. Majority of the decisions that the corporations are making are in order to protect and preserve their bottom line. And I mean, I haven't experienced that in the music industry, and I would hope that we're slightly ahead of the curve in understanding that our creatives and the people that put money in our pockets need some time to be able to sit with themselves a bit differently and look at the world slightly different. Now, isolation 1.0 was a very, very different experience for me, in the sense that that's when all the anxieties and the mental health issues manifested. I'd always known that I had some challenges with mental health, but my coping mechanism was to keep busy. So me being busy doing my corporate world, then outside of work, I'm being a mentor, because I also do live in mentorship, where I take care of kids that come in through the DHHS program. And then I'm also being a creative. I was always busy, so I never had a chance to actually sit down and acknowledge some of the mental challenges that I was facing. Instead, I dealt with the symptoms instead of looking at the roots. What's 2.0 did for me was it created this never-ending situation where I was looking at a space of 6 months and I was like, yeah, 6 months I can cope. Now it's like, oh, we don't know when this is going to end. So now I have to deal with these things. I took the path of going down the medical intuitive healing process. I've been seeing a hypnotherapist for the last 3 weeks. And I mean, for myself, the results have been amazing. I've been able to deal with a whole load of issues, from childhood traumas to even traumas that I've formed or at least encountered as an adult. What that's actually led me to believe is that resilience isn't necessarily wanting to go back to a state, but it's actually for you to adapt to the new state. Because who I am today, as compared to 3 weeks ago, is completely different. I've had to relearn who Z is. A couple of weeks ago, I did a concert with Music Victoria. Usually before concerts, prior to me actually going through this healing process, I would have anxiety attacks. If we had technical issues, which actually happened during the concert, I would not be able to cope. But in this case, I searched for the anxiety before the show because that's what I was comfortable with, and it wasn't there. During the show, while we had all these technical issues, I was pretty much content and comfortable in understanding that it's technology. There's nothing I can do apart from adapt and keep moving forward. And even post that, I felt fulfilled from having done this concert. And I think this is a conversation that I've had with a few of my peers within the music industry, where we are so attached to the economic gains as being an artist because this is our source of income. This is how we put food on our table. But we forget that in order for us to be able to do that and exercise that in its fullest potential, we have to look into ourselves and actually address the issues that have become those limiting factors for us to actually reach out and engage with the wider community.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much, ZIIMUSIC, for sharing all of that information. Really grateful. ZIIMUSIC, I did want to ask you, I know that you, from a conversation we had last week, that you're also a mentor to disadvantaged youth in Victoria. And I just wanted to ask you how you might role model resilience to those people that you work with, especially when you're not maybe feeling it yourself.
Yeah, that's actually a very, very good question. How it's played out just to add a little bit of context, the mentorship program that Vivien just mentioned is actually called Lead Tenancy. And the idea is when a family or parents are unable to or deemed unfit to take care of their children, the government takes them in. And depending on their age, they either go through the Resi system, and then they transition into the Lead Tenancy program between the age of 16 and 18. And the idea is to be able to model somewhat of a stable home. Now, I've learned over the years that dysfunction is present in every home, and it's important to be able to acknowledge that because the way in which I was influenced, or at least that I was taught how family works, was based on what Hollywood presented. And it's this fantastic utopia where mom, dad, and the kids get along really well. But that's not the reality. We have individual personalities, and they sometimes clash. So within this environment, it's actually to try and model something that will kind of normalize and expose these kids to things that we have taken for granted. Like a lot of us, if we've grown up in what we would define as a stable home, we've been exposed to things like working with a budget, making sure that we exercise hygiene, cleaning after ourselves, and just the basic things of understanding that human interaction also involves conflict, and how that conflict is dealt with is an important thing. Now, most of these kids haven't had that experience. In fact, the trauma that they've experienced is so overwhelming that some of the stories I have to sit with and just be grateful for the fact that I'm given the opportunity to provide this space in which they can heal. Now, what I've learned in this COVID period, because that's also kind of brought up different challenges, is in order for you to have that capacity to create spaces for people around you, you need to have dealt with yourself first. So going back to your earlier question about ISO version 1 and ISO version 2, in version 1, I felt like I had the capacity to be able to deal with a whole lot of things, but we had a few cases that happened here as a result of this incubation. So the energy that was bouncing around the walls was not escaping the house, and therefore it became this hot pressure bed. Things that would normally not annoy me were starting to annoy me, like somebody leaving the door open was becoming like a massive issue. What that highlighted to me was that the environment itself was not the problem, but my capacity to be able to contain the triggers that would inactivate those trauma I no longer had that capacity, and therefore I had to address the situation for myself. Now, those subtle things are still present, even though I've gone through those that healing process. But my capacity to be able to deal with that has been enabled because I'm no longer responding from a place of trauma. I'm now responding from a place of empathy. And I think for the most part, this is what our human experience should be like. It's important to understand that our human experience actually does come from a place of trauma, because regardless of what journey we've come from, we've experienced some sort of psychological impact, whether it's through our interactions with our friends when we were younger, the way in which we were brought up in our family households, or even just the general outlook. As a Black man, I've had to witness people that look like me die on social media repetitively. And that has a psychological impact on me. I have a choice on whether I sit down and form a belief system around why those people have died, or I can actually empower myself and start to speak in a forum like this, where we can actually start to move towards a world where our human experience is consistent all around.
Thank you so much, ZIIMUSIC. Sarah, we were sitting there in a little square in the wings. Sarah, you manage a team of people at Ditto Music. And I just wonder, what are the challenges for you of, in the face of all this COVID uncertainty, how do you help your team prop up their own resilience as a manager? Is that your responsibility? What's your kind of perspective on that?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, I'm just going to say I've been connecting so much with what everyone has been saying, and thank you for sharing. Managing a team of people remotely has its challenges, and I guess I have to rely on them to be able to come to me if they need something. But I think it's my responsibility to make sure they feel comfortable in doing that. The ways that I try to do that is make sure they know that they can have a mental health day, take annual leave, even though they can't go on a holiday, talk to me about their workload and have those opportunities to do that. And something else I've been thinking a fair bit about is just the idea of being completely honest with how I'm actually feeling, so then they feel that they can do the same thing. I think previously I thought my role as a manager was to be, positive all the time and be a bit of a cheerleader and you got this and you can do this. But, I've had struggles throughout this period as well, like everyone has. And so being a bit more honest and open about that with my team has hopefully given them the opportunity to do the same. Sometimes I'll do that with humour, such as, needed an extra large coffee this morning, my God, something, or whatever it might be. Or just, checking in and just being like, yeah, I'm feeling a bit shit today. I found it hard. Mondays in lockdown are harder, etc. So I think just having this open door, honest kind of a policy where people can then ask for what they need and be honest with how they're feeling as well is a way to connect and make sure people feel comfortable and open in saying how they really feel, because I don't want people to tell me they're great if they're not. I want them to be honest, so then I can go, okay, you're overworked, or you need some extra resources, or you need a break. So I think that having that kind of, example of me explaining if I'm not feeling great has been really refreshing, and I don't always have to be 100% okay, especially in a pandemic.
Yeah, and it seems like the thread of vulnerability is running deep throughout this talk. You as a manager, Z, everyone has touched on that in some sense, and that really toxic positivity you know, it's okay, she'll be right, you'll be okay, you know, chin up, that it's more helpful than harmful.
Yeah, or I feel like if someone's trying to express how they feel and then they get minimized, if someone's trying to express how they're feeling and then someone else just tries to sort of minimize that and say how fine everything is, or it becomes a competition of who's actually, you know, feeling shittier than the other. I just don't really think that that's helpful, and it doesn't form connection. And I've noticed if I'm trying to say that I feel a bit shit for whatever reason, and then someone says, oh, but you've still got a job, oh, you've still got this, blah, blah, blah. I then go into this mode of trying to prove what is wrong. And I'm like, but this and this and this. And that's not really a healthy way to approach that either. If someone just connects with me and just says, yes, you know, I understand, or I'm feeling that way too, or we have a little bit of a vent together, then you feel that bond and connection and then can start to prop each other up. But I think, you know, that compassion and empathy that we've been talking about is important as a starting point, because I don't like trying to compete with someone as to who's having the worst day. That's not a competition I want to win.
Yeah. And I feel like it's hard to have this conversation without referring or referencing that other term that we're hearing a lot about during this pandemic, which is the pivot. And, you know, from my personal exchanges with clients and whatnot, I've seen that comparing themselves to others has been a source of distress at times. You know, how come that person has found the silver lining, but I haven't? You know, why aren't I further along? Why can't I be more productive? And I just wonder about that from a business perspective too. You know, as a music company, do you feel that pressure as a manager to pivot, even if the team might not be collectively feeling the resilience to do that?
Yeah, I guess at Ditto we're lucky because we've been naturally busier in some ways because people want to release more music because a lot of people are being creative. But I'm also, you know, conscious of not putting too much pressure on the team at the moment. And it really is a bit of a case of getting through. I think lockdown 1, I had all of these fitness goals and, you know, I'm going to be ripped by the time we come out of this. And lockdown 2, I can see Z shaking his head. Same. Luke, yes. Lockdown 2, I'm like, I just want to get through this and just appreciate the life that we had and the things that we could do on the other side, because I just have this vision of, you know, sitting at a bar with friends and drinking a wine and laughing. And I'm like, that was magic. And we weren't seeing the magic in it. So I just hope that we appreciate it afterwards. But yeah, there's definitely a sense of getting through at the moment. And I've also been talking a lot about riding the wave that you're on. If you're on a productive streak, you know, work, get things done, chat to people, have Zoom calls. If you're feeling, you know, not so good that day and not as productive, don't put this huge pressure on yourself to have the same motivation and output every day. Because, you know, for me, I'm an extrovert. I like people, and not having that around each day sometimes affects my motivation and my mood. So, you know, I just ride the wave that I'm on and have that self-compassion and not try and push through all the time, because then it just feels like such a grind. And I say that to my team as well. You know, if you want to go for a jog in the middle of the day, do it. If you want to work extra hours one night and then start later the next day, just kind of harness the energy and the wave that you're on.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And I guess that's true of resilience. You know, some days you have it more than others, you know. Thank you. Ash, I'd like to jump back across to you. And I wonder if you could maybe tell us what are some of the things that we might do on a day-to-day basis, maybe even unknowingly, that are sabotaging our ability to be resilient.
Yeah, thanks, Viv. And can I just say that I'm feeling super inspired and really grateful to just be here on the panel and listening to these amazing people talk and be open about some of this stuff that's so important and really just doesn't get the type of hype that it needs and doesn't get normalized like it should. You know, things like ZIIMUSIC spoke to, you know, sitting with yourself and understanding how behaviors are a response to unhealed trauma. Like, that's some heavy shit, but we all have to deal with it. And I think it's something that we need to talk about more, because so much of our behaviors are motivated by things that we don't even consciously recognize. And I think that takes me back to your question, Viv, in terms of the habits and behaviors that we engage in that can take away from our resilience. A lot of these types of behaviors have been adaptive or have served us in the past. So for instance, something like isolation and removing yourself from others, you know, thinking, I don't want to overburden someone else. I'm feeling miserable at the moment, and, you know, my misery is not a fun emotion to be around, so I'm not going to be open to it. You know, just like Sarah mentioned, modeling vulnerability there's a huge bravery in that. And often we think that the solution is the opposite, you know, put on a brave face, don't talk about it, you know, don't overburden other people. But when we're not open about it, people don't know that they might be suffering in similar ways. And it's ways that we can really connect human to human. I think that also this idea of being too passive. So really kindling this mindset that the world happens to you, that things happen to you. You know what? Things do happen to you, and sometimes they're really shitty things. But essentially, we all have this source of power to, you know, enact our will among, like, upon the world too. We can do what we can do, and I think that sometimes it just comes down to recognizing what that is, and yeah, not being sucked down that rabbit hole of thinking, okay, well, you know, well, this is it. This is just the world behaving, you know, against me. Another thing that I think really does pull away from resilience is sort of overthinking, ruminating, and wallowing. So spending a lot of time in our head with our thoughts that are not the most helpful thoughts either. And again, you know, as ZIIMUSIC said, we need to recognize maybe why we're thinking these things, why we're stuck in these patterns of thought, and challenging them, asking ourselves, how do they help us? Or where might this come from? And how might this have helped me in the past? You know, maybe when I was a kid going through some tough stuff with my family or at school, and how is it not helping me now? And asking yourself that question, I think, is really brave. And I think it's really important if you want to start building a more resilient mindset.
Yeah, and that is a really great segue into a question that I had actually about our past experiences of adversity and the way that we've responded to adversity in the past, and what does that tell us about our ability to cope now?
Yeah, so another awesome question. I think that, you know, we've all been through hard things, and we all will go through the hard things again. Our ability to have gotten through what we have gotten through in the past can inform us as to how we feel, or how confident we feel about getting through something hard again. But I think what's important to point out is this idea of flexibility, and also recognizing, again, like ZIIMUSIC said, that we're not the same person that we were when we went through that other adversity. We are different, and things have changed. So the tools that we used to get through it last time, they might not be working anymore, you know. They might be the wrong tools, and we might need to find new ones. So I think allowing yourself to have this mindset that, okay, so this is really hard, but I can get through it. But I might need to be flexible. I might need to be creative in finding new ways to approach this situation, because I'm not the same person, and this is a new situation. And I think in light of something like COVID, you know, this is new. We haven't lived through a bloody global pandemic before. There's not a blueprint. There's not a checklist, you know, like, okay, well, in order to get through and build resilience and make this, you know, a very productive and efficient experience, I need to do X, Y, and Z. Like, I really wish that I had that checklist that I could give everyone. I really do. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist, and it's so personal. You know, there's no one size fits all to getting through challenge and adversity, to building resilience. And I think that a lot of the time it starts with you. It starts with looking within and recognizing who you are and what you need.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. And also, I suppose, understanding that what we need as individuals will differ from our friends and our family, that it's different. It's a highly individual thing for us all. I believe there's a question for you from Billy. Are you still there, Billy? Have you got a question for Ash?
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry, I only just saw your message there, Vivien, but if I can ask it to the group. Ash, you mentioned before that sometimes resilience, like we might not know when we're building it, but obviously there are some times when we're doing productive things that don't necessarily feel good, and then other times when we're doing things that also don't feel good, that are not productive. Do you have any ideas or thoughts on telling the difference between those two?
Yeah, Billy, that's a really good question. You're like, okay, so if it doesn't feel good, you're like, how do I know what's, doesn't feel good but is good for me, or what doesn't feel good and is bad for me? Okay, so as human beings, our, evolutionary response is to stay away from things that are uncomfortable or things that don't feel good. So we have this inbuilt, reaction to being like, oh, nah, that feels not good, and I'll push it away. I think this is, unfortunately, when we have to do the real work, the real deep work in looking at behaviors that stem from a place of denial or self-preservation that kind of keeps you small. So this is what happens when, again, ZIIMUSIC mentioned something like overworking. Sometimes we think, oh shit, I'm getting so much done, I'm working so hard, I'm being really productive. We think that is us doing great, that it's us killing it. But essentially, sometimes it's us trying to not feel things. It's us trying to deny what we're going through, or even recognizing our own vulnerability. So again, this is a hard one, and often something that I would recommend, like working through with a therapist, because it does take you deep into evaluating your behaviors and recognizing when they're not serving you and the ones that are serving you. And sometimes, you need to throw a couple of new behaviors into the mix, try to start some new healthy habits, a lot of the boring stuff that we always know is good for us that maybe, we find it hard to make time for. So, a lot of that stuff, all the research shows, is really helpful. But again, you can over exercise, you can be over rigid with, your diet and things like that, and turn that into a problem. So everything, can be a behavior, I suppose, that doesn't help. And what has to be done is you need to look at yourself, and you also need to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, recognizing what feelings are coming up and maybe how you're trying to avoid sitting in that feeling state. You don't want to feel that anxiety. You don't want to feel that sadness. You don't want to feel that fear. Feelings can't hurt you. And I think that a lot of us think that they can, and that when we feel bad things, it's a sign that, well, this is all bad, whatever's happening. Feelings are natural and human responses to the world around us, or maybe what's happening inside us. So yeah, amazing question, Billy. I don't know if I really helped you answer that. I think that it does come down to a lot of soul searching and personal development work, and, getting clear on your values as well, understanding what is important to you and how the things that you're doing might be taking you away or like further away from those values, and how the things that you're doing might be leading you closer towards them.
Cool, thank you. I'll try and figure that out this afternoon.
Yeah, you got it in Arvo, no worries.
Thanks, Billy. That was a really great question. Thank you so much, Ash. Luke, I know we're getting close to time, but I just want to ask you, I guess we're all in the music industry for a reason. And how important do you think it is to reconnect to our purpose, to get through adversity, to take us back to the core of why we're here in the first place?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to it. Firstly, like for me, forgetting all of the business side of being a musician was important. Like with my band, like taking out a support act with my band, we were on a bit of a crest of a wave. We were starting to have some success. For the first time in my 37 years, the work had paid off. And I was pretty excited about that. And thankfully, I just play old man dad rock. So it kind of fits in well with my demographic now, which is good. But, you know, what I really needed to do was go, listen, I need to not stress about the commercial, the business side of it, the career aspect of it, and really get back to my craft. And, you know, just try and play guitar for joy and write songs for joy. And, you know, I thankfully have a large band of 12 other people, and we can convene on Zoom and things like that and work through, you know, doing our isolation projects together. But also, like, just before I took on my role as support act, I've been a booking agent for the last 8 years. And through that huge network of artists that I was booking there, like talking with a lot of them about that pressure to use this as creative time and, you know, taking a, you know, basically a career break, an enforced career break, go, okay, this is all about songwriting. This is all about producing art. But that can lead to pressures of its own. So for myself, it's like, okay, I can get frustrated and annoyed about not achieving what I want to be able to achieve, but I have to also acknowledge that I have a child and a job, and, you know, and also a life outside of music that I want to make sure that I'm feeling healthy across all of those different things. So yeah, important to feel like, you know, you're still connected with what you do and what your identity is, I guess. But for me, and the advice I've given, especially a lot of younger musicians in my network, is to say, hey, you know, like, you don't need to focus on becoming, you know, the absolute creative being you've always hoped you would be, if that's going to make you feel bad, you know, if you don't achieve those goals.
Thanks so much, Luke. ZIIMUSIC, I wonder what your take is on whether, and I realise that the stresses that you've talked about today go well beyond COVID and go into systemic racism. But I wonder what your take is on whether going through something like this as a collective provides an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, that's actually a very, very interesting question, because as everyone was talking, I was actually trying to think through the concept of growth. And I think as humans, we've constantly been pushed outside of our comfort zone, which is another definition of growth. When we are born, we're being pushed out of our mother's womb because we've outgrown that space. Then we outgrow feeding off our mother's breast milk into eating solid foods. Then we're thrown into this world, which inhibits our growth. So I had the privilege of starting to go to school at the age of 6 years. And prior to me going to school, I was extremely curious of the world. Like, I questioned everything, I tasted everything, I got hurt by a lot of things that taught me a few things about pain, and therefore kind of helped me see the world in a different way. I was very, very curious and creative with the way that I expressed myself. Then you're put into this education system, and for myself, it lasted from the age of 6 right through till I was 25, where you're forced into boxes. So in grade 6, you're told that this is all you can learn, and this is something that somebody discovered a few years ago. Do not question why it's there. This is how the world works. And by the time you get to the age of 25 and you're being forced to go into the world, you realize that it doesn't quite work that way, because the human experience is so varied and so variable that your growth is always going to be stunted, right? So my understanding of growth has kind of led me to believe that your definition of life is really dependent on how you practice the art of reimagining how the world looks. Now, by my understanding of what reimagining how the world looks is when we're caught up in a situation like this, like COVID. If I was a full-time artist and majority of my earnings came from me doing tours, from me performing live, and from me doing other activities that involved me not being at home, how do I reimagine who I am in this new space? Am I going to be restricted by the definition of the fact that I'm a touring artist? Or am I going to look at other creative ways in which I can participate in this economic practice? Now, I do understand and realize that kind of thinking actually comes from a privileged position, because the way in which our lives are structured are such that we are forced to have to worry about paying bills before we worry about our own mental health and how we view ourselves. So it is a bit of a challenge to actually get to that place where you can start to reimagine who you are in these spaces. But I believe that it actually does start with you sitting with yourself. Bill, this probably will be something that will benefit you in your process this afternoon. I love the concept of journeying. And by journeying, what I mean is when an event happens, you allow yourself to respond to that event the way you would in that particular scenario. But you give yourself the time to actually sit down and watch how that event entered your space, why you responded the way you did, and how you then enacted after that. And that is another avenue of growth, because then once you align it with your value system and the belief systems that you've embodied since childhood, you can then experience life in a different way, right? So when I talk about belief systems, my understanding of belief systems is that these exist in our subconscious, and our subconscious forms belief systems based on experiences and events that happen throughout our life. And some of these belief systems are formed around traumatic experiences. And these are stories that we tell ourselves as kids. And I'll use myself as an example. When I was about 2 years old, I had an event that happened where I was playing with some toys and my dad called me. I got up, I ran, I tripped, I fell, and my dad asked me, "Oh, what are you doing?" And then he picked me up to console me. Now, the story that I had told myself from that question was that I was not good enough. And therefore that attached a belief system, which I carried for such a long time, until I had the opportunity to actually sit down and say, what is the root of me having this belief that I'm not good enough? I perform at so many venues, I create such amazing art, but I just don't feel like I'm good enough. Yet people pay money to come and watch me perform. People buy my material. I don't feel good enough. So there's a problem here. And me sitting down and actually observing how that journey happened helped me redefine that interaction. And once I had redefined that interaction, all the other scenarios that were compounded and created following that were healed in that sense, because now I understand that the reason why my father was asking me what I'm doing was from a place of concern, not from a place of judgment. And I think being able to do that, I mean, fundamentally, it just comes down to you sitting with yourself and being honest with yourself, and not allowing the world to dictate who you are, because the world is structured in such ways that we have boxes. The music industry is filled with genres because we need to be able to market so that a particular audience can be attached to your music. Whereas if you just have music, it becomes a really complex thing. And I think that aspect of growth is important in defining who you are and just being comfortable in your skin. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ZIIMUSIC, sharing that story. And I agree. I would like to think that, you know, in spite of everything that's going on and the challenges that we're facing, albeit everyone's facing it in a different way, that there is an opportunity for things to change and maybe, you know, and I realise that this is I guess a privileged position, but to be able to reflect on the things that weren't working and how it might be different moving forward when we eventually get out of this situation, knowing that there's many more situations that follow, but the idea of, you know, reflecting and what do I want to ditch, what's not helpful anymore. Sarah, I might finish up with you before just quickly going back to Ash to ask a technical question. But is resilience for you being able to look for and pursue opportunities, even in this sort of weird time where we don't know, you know, the shaky backdrop and we don't really know what's ahead of us?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, yes, when you're in the right headspace to do so. I guess going back to what I was saying before, sometimes I'm not in that headspace, and looking at new opportunities and how I can expand the business is not where my mind can go, but other times, absolutely. And I think this whole period in history has been fascinating, because it's just looking at human behavior, how different people interact, how this has affected, you know, introverts and extroverts and different people around the world. It's really interesting. So there's a lot of things that can be learnt, but we're not able to put them all into practice yet. So I guess I'm just listening and learning and seeing what other people are doing, and haven't put too many different things in practice yet. But yeah, depending on the headspace, absolutely a time to try new things and be creative, because we've had to as well. And we've seen a lot of things that we were sticking to, such as, you know, going to an office every day from 9 to 5. That kind of a lifestyle doesn't have to be the norm. And we've seen that people can be just as productive, if not more, at home. And so, you know, I asked my team, what would you enjoy more, going to the office or working from home? How do you feel you'd work better? So thinking on a different perspective with things, absolutely, because it's thrown a lot of questions up into the air.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Ash, just a question that's come in here, or maybe a clarification about additional mental health sessions that might be available through GPs at this time due to COVID. Is that the case?
Yeah, so I do believe that if you're in Victoria, you can go and top up your mental health care plan by popping into the GP, or obviously having a telehealth session with them, letting them know how you're going. They'll do a quick evaluation and write up a plan for you. And one thing I would suggest in that is that if you haven't found a therapist that you connect with, or someone that you feel like you can be open and vulnerable with, don't stop there. I know that it's so hard when you're feeling really low and you're really struggling, but there are people out there that can help. Obviously, Luke spoke to a bunch of free resources with Support Act as well. You know, there's no shame in reaching out. It's in fact an incredible act of bravery to recognize when you need some support. And hell, like, of course you might need support right now, because the world is a weird place to be living in, and sometimes it's just too hard to do it alone, or you just might not have the answers for yourself, and you need a little bit of perspective from somebody else. So that's what someone, you know, in the mental health space can really offer, but you do need someone that you can feel comfortable being vulnerable with. So, you know, hunt around, ask people that you know who they've spoken to, and yeah, just get the help you need, because it's definitely out there.
Thanks, Ash. And Luke, perhaps we could just finish up by you reminding us again of the incredibly helpful services that Support Act offers.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously financial security is a huge component in being able to have the resilience to deal with adversity. We know a lot of people are doing it tough right now. So since May, Support Act has given out $1.5 million in crisis relief grants to music workers in our industry who are struggling financially. And there's no shame in that. Everyone's doing it really tough right now. Our grants take the form of short-term financial support, with our applications being processed and supported by our social work team. Our support helps to pay rent, mortgage, power bills, phone bills, car rego, medical expenses, life expenses. And we also provide funeral support where it's needed. Our grants are not competitive, which is something that people in the music industry are amazed by, because grants are always competitive in our industry, but I'm here to tell you that they are not. Anyone who meets our criteria qualifies to receive a grant, and this is money that was given to Support Act by the federal government through the Office for the Arts, specifically to support people who work in music through these tough times. And the last thing is Support Act is running a whole ongoing workshop series of related to mental health called On My Mind, which features myself and Ash facilitating some kind of therapeutic journeys around a number of topics. And if anyone's interested in continuing this discussion, we'd love to have you join us on one of those. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you all so much. I've learned a lot, and I've been blown away by your generosity and your honesty and your wisdom. And I imagine that this has been really helpful for the people who have been listening and following this discussion. Obviously a much bigger discussion to be had at some point. a lovely shout out here for you, ZIIMUSIC. Wonderful observations and perspectives on the world and on being a human. Thanks for sharing and offering your views. So unless, oh, actually there's a question here. Where can we join the On My Mind workshop, Luke?
Yeah, we generally advertise them on our social media. So look out for an announcement of our next workshop towards the end of this week, and make sure you go and like our page. We always put up all information about our workshops, our grant program, all that kind of thing via our Facebook and Instagram pages.
Oh, thanks, Luke. So Katie, I think that we will wrap up. I want to thank you again for inviting me to take part. I've learned so much today. Thank you, ZIIMUSIC, Ash, Luke, and Sarah for being here. You're all warm-hearted legends. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, panel. Do the Auslan applause. If you're still on mute. Thank you so much. That was such a fantastic panel. I really loved hearing each of your perspectives. Yeah, that's definitely worth a rewatch. We're going to publish that video in about 48 hours on our Facebook and YouTube channels. So if anyone wants to rewatch, keep an eye out for that. So we'll have our next networking breakfast coming up in about a month's time. The topic is yet to be revealed, but Jess has just popped the link in the chat there. There's a Facebook event. We've created a save the date event, so you can click attending or click interested, and you'll be updated with our next networking breakfast topic, which is coming up on Wednesday, 23rd of September. So we will finish it up there and let you all head back into your networking groups again, if you like. So thanks for everyone for joining us this morning. You'll get a pop-up in your Zoom window to rejoin a breakout room if you're interested in doing that. So feel free to accept that now, and we will see you all next time. Thanks again.